What's going on, guys? You're listening to The Engine on YouTube. Johnny Fogel, Nick Freeman, Nick Falk. We've got a very special guest for you guys today. Today on the show, we have Coach Jon Scheyer. You know him as the assistant basketball coach for the Duke Blue Devils and a very talented recruiter, recruiting such names as Zion Williamson, Jason Tatum, and many more. Before that, he was an Illinois basketball state champion, an Illinois Mr. Basketball. He even attended Duke University, where he won a national championship in 2010. After a brief overseas professional basketball career, including a stop in Tel Aviv, Israel, where he also became a dual citizen, he returned to Duke to begin his coaching career with legendary Coach K. Coach Jon Scheyer, hometown hero, welcome to The Engine. How you doing, man? How's your quarantine?
I appreciate you guys having me. And I don't know if I can give you much more information about myself. I appreciate the intro. But anyway, good to be here with you guys.
Yeah, thank you. So to start out, how is being a former basketball player and star recruit yourself help you relate to the team, and how's it helped you as a college coach?
Well, I just think it gives you good perspective, right? And, things honestly are so different now, even when I came through, which feels like forever ago. But, 14, 15 years ago, the way recruiting is, the rosters and the way they're shaped in college and the amount of time that guys stay in school, it's different. But at the end of the day, being a player, and especially playing at Duke, it helps even more just to relate to what the guys are going through. It's a different dynamic, and same thing in recruiting. And again, the more experience you have, the better it is. So for me, I'm thankful that I was able to have that to relate to some of these guys.
Absolutely. So Duke is always in contention for the guys they seem to target, but they're not always the very top recruits. What kinds of players does Duke avoid when they're recruiting?
Well, it's a good question. For us, it's not just about talent. It's far from that, and it's also about the character that someone has. Academically, Duke is an amazing school, and those two things, in addition to the talent. And then lastly, I think we look for guys who win, and we're fortunate to have a lot of players come to Duke that have won at a very high level, whether it be high school, AAU. And those things are important, and those things translate. And so when we're recruiting a kid, that's important for us as well.
When you're recruiting someone, are there ever reasons to avoid a player because you're concerned that they're going to go to a different school, or you're concerned that they're going to play overseas now that that's become more relevant?
Yeah, we haven't gotten into that quite yet. And, honestly, we feel like we have a shot with most guys. But for us, when we identify who the right guy is, we're going to go for him. And, whatever the end result is, hopefully we get him. But if we don't, we feel like it's because they're the right fit as a person. They're the right fit as a player. And, I can name lots of reasons why we wouldn't recruit somebody. But I think for us, it really boils down to who's the right fit for Duke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. How do you get assigned your target recruits?
For us, we don't have a territory or anything like that. We work well as a coaching staff or us as assistants. And if one of us hears about a kid, sees a kid, we communicate that. And, frankly, one of us will be a lead on a guy, but all of us communicate with all of our recruits. We do it as a team, and I think that's one of the reasons we've been so successful. It's not about my guy or your guy or anything like that, which is really helpful.
Do you have a certain strategy to approach the recruits?
Yeah, just be honest. And look, I'm lucky to work at a place and, be at a school like Duke. One, I chose to come here and play here. But then two, I decided to come back and coach here as well. And so it speaks for itself. I believe in this place. I believe in Duke with everything I have. I believe in Coach K. And so when I'm recruiting and talking to kids, it's not about selling anything. It's really just speaking from the heart,
Mm-hmm.
talking about my experiences here and, my experience as a coach. And that's really what it comes down to for me.
You clearly are a Duke guy all the way, but have you considered leaving Duke to become a head coach somewhere?
Well, being a head coach is something I want to do in time. And, I've been fortunate to have a few opportunities. But really for me, it's about just the right fit whenever that time comes. I'm in no hurry. I have an amazing job. I'm with, in my opinion, the best to ever do it in Coach K. I'm right next to him. And so, again, I'm in no rush. Again, at some point, do I want to be a head coach? Yes. But right now, my focus is totally on Duke.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then as a former 4-year college player and current big-time recruiter, how do you feel about the possibility of high school players being able to go straight to the G League for money and maybe eventually straight to the NBA?
Yeah, I think with that, we take that information as it comes out, and, really the more choices guys have, that's great. We're still going to have the right fit for us and identify those players. But again, I think it's a great thing. The more choices guys have, the better it is.
Would this change your recruiting strategies?
I don't know. I don't think so. But for us, we're just going to take it all in stride. And it's very easy to look ahead and think about what if, or if something happens. But really, for us, it's let's figure out what the information is. Let's see how things play out and happen, and then go from there.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Coach.
Yeah,
All
no
right.
problem.
Nice to meet you, Coach. I hope your quarantine's going well. My first question, you were a very celebrated high school basketball player, winning Mr. Basketball in Illinois. You actually grew up pretty close to us in Northbrook. We live in Blanco, Winnetka, Wilmette. So how was that transition going to a superstar Duke team? How was that like trying to fight for minutes?
Well, I think for me, you guys can speak to this, but growing up in that area, I grew up watching a lot of local players. Matt Loddick at New Trier was one of my all-time favorite players, still is to this day. Ryan Hogan at Deerfield, Jordan Cardos was at Glenbrook North. And so for me, I felt like those guys had started something where you could come from. And, of course, Chris Collins, when I was really young, Chris, who I ended up playing for at Duke, who's now the current coach at Northwestern. There was enough guys who had done it where I felt like it was you can make your mark coming through that way. And the one thing I learned is always to have a chip on my shoulder. The North Shore wasn't exactly known for its basketball prowess. And so, I was always had a chip on my shoulder wanting to show that I could play with anybody. And so when I got to Duke, it's competitive in practices, competitive in the ACC. And so I think it prepared me really well.
So you thought you were really mentally prepared for that challenge?
I really think as much as, physically there's an adjustment no matter what, but mentally the competition I played against and just being coached at a high level in high school from Dave Weber, and then the competition, again, our high school team played against really prepared me well.
So you won a state championship and a national championship at Duke in 2010, where you averaged about 18 points a game, which is pretty amazing. But how does that compare? How do the two compare against each other? I know they're very different, but just explain some of the differences. Yeah,
well, with high school, it was with my best friends. We had grown up together and we had played ball with each other all starting at a really young age, second, third grade, and that core stuck together. And, we won in my junior year, and the team that won, it was made up of, predominantly juniors and seniors, and we are very close with the class above us. And so there's nothing like it. We still have a group chat to this day. We keep in touch. We were texting about, the last dance last night and, bringing back a lot of memories. And then college, again, those became my best friends and close friends. But it's just on a bigger scale, right? The best competition in the country, winning March Madness in the tournament, there's nothing like it. And it's truly something I'll never forget.
So you played for Duke all 4 years, which just isn't very common these days. But what did you learn from Coach K, and how is he unique and different from other college and NBA coaches?
Well, I think Coach, he thinks the game in a very different way. And, he's great with X's and O's, but I think where he's at his best is his ability to connect to his players and the ability to motivate. And so I think one of the things, if you look back through Coach's time at Duke, our teams have always played as hard, if not harder, than anybody else. And that's not just the players. The players have a lot to do with it, but Coach, the way he's able to get our teams to play together and it's hard, I think that's what makes him so unique. And again, I could go through X's and O's. I could talk about, specific in-game strategies and moments like that. But to me, that's what separates him.
I know you didn't personally play for Phil Jackson, but how do you think of his motivation compared to Phil Jackson as we saw last night? A little bit in The Last Dance.
Yeah, well, it's different, right? And, Phil Jackson, he had calming presence. And, Michael read an article yesterday, MJ was talking about, how Phil would meditate and, wouldn't necessarily say something directly to you, but he had a way of getting his point across. And end of the day, coaching professionals and coaching guys who are 10-year vets in the league is different than college as well. But no question, two of the best that have ever done it.
How would you describe your coaching style? What separates you from other coaches?
That's a good question. I think for me right now, it's important as assistant coach to feed off your head coach. And, I try, now Coach K and I've been around coaches on staff. This would be my 8th year on the coaching staff, 4 years as a player, lucky to be recruited by him for a few years. And so I know him well enough now where I can try to balance out whatever the team needs, whatever he needs, right? And that's important to do. And, Coach, he's been through it all. He has it covered. But I just try to compliment him, whether it be in game or in practice, whatever way is best. And it's hard to give an exact feel for it. But I bounce off of him.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So Coach, in 2005, you were Illinois Mr. Basketball, like we mentioned earlier. One of your Final Four colleges was the University of Illinois in your home state, in our home state. What made you choose Duke over Illinois?
Yeah, well, I felt like I'd gone through a long recruiting process. I actually ended up committing pretty early, spring of my junior year. And I loved Illinois. They were coming off an amazing year. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the team with Luther Head and D. Brown and Darren Williams. But that was in 2005. They went undefeated until the last game of the year. It was a special run they went on. So you guys remember that?
Yeah, Darren
Williams. A little. Seen highlights.
I remember my other players.
I wonder how old you guys were at that point. But anyway, it was a special season. And I actually was at the UNC Illinois final that year of the tournament. But, for me, it just came down to, Duke as a whole, right? And playing for Coach K. And the more people said I won't be able to play at Duke, the more I wanted to do it. And that was something I wanted to show and wanted to prove that I could play at any level. And Duke was a special place. It just fit. And again, Chris Collins, having the personal connection to him, he went to Glenbrook North, and we, to this day, we're in touch and close. So that had a lot to do with it as well.
For me, I feel like a good coach is somebody who makes you not only want to play the game more, but learn more. What's one thing that you're going to take that Coach K has taught you to your next job?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, I would just say the bigger the game, the more relaxed that coach is. And, you asked me that question, Nick, about, Phil Jackson and the way Michael talks about him and the biggest moments he would become. That's how coach is. And, for me as a head coach, at some point, I want to be able to give my players confidence and also the freedom in the biggest games to be able to follow their instincts. Just go for it. This basketball is a game. It's not a game to be nervous or to be hesitant. It's a game to go for it. And that's one of the things Coach has done an incredible job of with our teams. And, that's something I would definitely like to continue.
If you can remember, because I know all three of us have seen the YouTube highlight of you scoring 21 points in 75 seconds, would you say that's just putting it all on the line and just playing with through freedom and just as well as you possibly can play?
Well, I think so. And, you know, it's funny. I'll never forget that night, actually, because, you know, our high school team, Glenbrook North at the time, we had won 35 games in a row, and dating back to the year before. And, you know, I'm a big history buff, and knowing the game and looking back, I always wanted to have an undefeated season. I always wanted to win at Proviso West. We were never able to do that. But we got down in that game, and I think the instincts just kicked in, you know, wanting to win. And I think the sickest part about it was we cut it to 3 times, and we were never able to get the lead and get the win. So after that game, I mean, here we are, you know, 15 years later talking about it. And I was crying my eyes out in the locker room after the game because I was so upset that we had lost. And, you know, I think to your point, just I always go back as a player. I was proud to always leave it on the floor, give it my all. And that's really what all you can ask for.
What would you say is something that you learned from your biggest losses? Because I know every time, like, people will say, well, when you win, you don't learn anything. When you lose, you learn something. What would you say is something that you mainly learned from your biggest losses?
Well, I think this is one of all you guys have asked great questions. And this is a great question because I think adversity now is harder than ever to handle in the right way. And, you know, I'll just talk about my career for a second. You know, my freshman year, we went downstate, when the furthest Glenbrook North has ever gone in the history of the school. And we were playing the semifinals versus Thornwood. And really good player, Eric Gray, hit a 3 over me with about 10 seconds to go. We were up by 2. They go up by 1, and I had a shot at the buzzer to win, to go to the state championship to play Sean Livingston's team in Peoria Central. And I missed it. And so there's a picture I have at my home where my parents live now in Chicago, in Northbrook, where it's me laying on the floor and the Thornwood team is celebrating around me. And I'm on the floor, you know, just upset, obviously. We had just lost. And then flash forward 2 years later, we win the state championship, and it was a very different picture that year. And instead of staying in that moment, I just said, we'll be back and we're going to win, and just got it in my mind. And I worked towards that. And the same thing, actually, when I got to Duke, we got upset in the first round, and it had always been a dream of mine of being one shining moment. You guys, I'm sure you watched it a million times. And my first time ever on it, Eric Maynor hit a game-winning shot for VCU over me to win, and we got upset in the first round. Again, a few years later, we win the national championship. And so I say that only because it's sport and careers are not linear. Like it doesn't go just like this. You go through ups and downs, and, you know, resiliency is important. Optimism is important, and grit. And so those are things I've tried to have, and, you know, stuck with me.
I feel like there's different ways that you can take a loss. Like, there's one way of thinking, this is all my fault. But then I really appreciate the way you said that you learn from it and you use it to reach your bigger goals. Like, you lose this game, but you move on to the bigger game. Is there something that, if you lost a big game at Duke or you lost a big game at Glenbrook North, it could be anything, that what would Coach K say at losing a big game compared to something that your high school coach would say?
Well, I think the biggest thing I learned at Duke, and you had a chance to do this more because we had film you could really go back and watch, but it's to first look at yourself. You know, before you think about what the other team did, or, you know, teammates, coaches, whatever it is, what could I have done better? And what would I do differently if I could have that chance again? And so that's something even now in my role at Duke, before I talk to any of our guys, I think about, did I prepare him the right way? Did I, you know, did we watch the right film? Was a scout exactly the right thing? And so that's what I think is most important, to first look at yourself and then figure out how does that fit in with the bigger picture.
So I transitioned because, to be respectful of your time, we have one final question for you, to a guy who hasn't really lost a lot of games, somebody that we'll probably never get to talk to, but Zion Williamson. Obviously, he's one of the most hyped up prospects in the past 25 years. Looked like a video game when he came on the scene in high school. What's one thing that the media gets wrong about Zion Williamson from the time that you spent with him at Duke?
Don't say you're never going to talk to him. There's a chance, Zion. You never know if he comes on the show. So, but was I your second choice next to Zion? You tried to get him. He said no. So,
Yeah.
It's I don't take any offense to that if that was the case. But you know, I think with Zion, you know, people get caught up with the dunks and the blocks and his speed, and all those things are incredible. And but for me, it's his feel for the game and his IQ. You know, he's these natural instincts that you just can't teach. And you know, there's multiple plays I can think of at Duke where his instincts to get in a passing lane and to get a steal and to be alert on the help side, to come over to block the shot. His passing, knowing the right time, how to fit a pass, you know, how to thread the needle, you know, to make a bounce pass to get it to a big guy inside. All those things to me is what makes Zion so special. Lastly, I just want to say with him, the coolest thing is the amount of attention that he gets. He's constantly trying to give it to other people or to his teammates. And, you know, we live in a day where, you know, attention is a cool thing and you try to get as much of it as you can. And here's a guy that has really the world at his fingertips, and all he wants to do is share it with his teammates and coaches and people in our program at the time. I'm sure now with the Pelicans.
Really like that answer. Thank you, Coach. That was a great interview. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you got this far, Jon Scheyer, you're welcome on the show anytime. Consider you a friend of the show. Thank you so much. Hope you have a great rest of your quarantine. Like, share, subscribe this video, and hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Keep going with it. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. Appreciate it.